Vadim Krishnalki is Media Center Ukraine, Ukraine Forum. Today we're speaking about the operative situation on the front line of Ukrainian-Russian war. Today with us Hanna Maliar, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksii Hromov, Deputy Head of the Head Administration of General Staff of Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksii Nadtochyi, Head of Operative Administration of National Guard Administration, and Viktor Vitovetsky, Director of the Department of Organization of Events of Civil Defense of Rescue Service of Ukraine. Ms. Hanna Maliar, we start, and all are interested and curious about the situation and are concerned about the situation of Vinnytsia. What you can comment on this, please explain what you have for today. Would like to greet with a phrase of good day, but regretfully we don't have good days recently. And we all understand that Russia continues war against civilian Ukrainians, continues killing our children. And today's strike in Vinnytsia is the one more evidence of genocide against Ukrainians. Russian Federation, in the eyes of all the world, has finally become a killer state, and such country has no room in our world in the 21st century. Regretfully, they are killed and wounded, and that information in detail will be informed by the General Staff of Armed Forces. For 141 days, as the war lasts, to defend our country and to reach the victory is the goal of all our Ukrainian nation that we on a daily basis we bring closer. Each one of us, here and abroad, on the battlefield, on economical and political and informational front lines, everywhere, has to be bound by a single goal. Our main force and the most efficient weapon is not to get the fatigue to defend our country and to be united for victory. This week we celebrated 25 years of signing a special charter between Ukraine and NATO that for many years is being the roadmap for Ukraine on the path of Euro-Atlantic integration. I recall that according to the Madrid summit strategy of NATO for the next 10 years, the main threat for the world was defined as Russia. As a consequence, they decided to enforce the eastern front line of NATO, and we are this eastern flank that defends the world and Europe from Russian aggressor. This week, there were important international events that allow continuing enforcing capabilities of Ukrainian defense forces. In particular, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Alexander Polishchuk, Vladimir Havrilov, and Denis Sharapov conducted meetings with delegation of Czech Republic that had advisors of Prime Minister on the external policy, Mr. Tomasz Pajara, and Deputy Minister of Defense, Tomasz Kapeczny. They discussed a topical defense situation in Ukraine in context of rejecting armed aggression of Russia and assistance. You know that Czech Republic really helps Ukraine in the humanitarian sphere and also with armaments and military equipment. And also the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksii Reznikov, discussed with Vice Prime Minister and Minister of National Defense of Poland, Mariusz Orszak, the issues of aid for Ukraine from Poland. Call that Polish Perun weapons, decrease amount of helicopters and aircrafts, and Crab artillery fires at the enemy on land. Also, we widen the scope of satisfying the religious need of our service people according to service in NATO. Many of priests are being on the front line together with the defenders. Their input in a joint victory is very important. Right now, we developed the structure project for service of military chaplains and the operations according to a legal base, and it will act. The service of military chaplains could amount about 700 positions of chaplains in armed forces of Ukraine. Security situation around Ukraine is difficult but controlled, and according to data of Administration of Intelligence, Russian occupants continue enforcing the administrative police regime on temporary occupied Ukrainian territories. The majority of occupied settlements, they widen the patrolling with armed forces of Russian Federation with equipment of additional roadblocks on occupied territories, temporary occupied territories. There's increased amount of searches of our civilians that are forced to stay there, searches in the places of their residence and in civil places. During searches, the persons that demonstrate disagreement, the occupants traumatize them physically and psychologically, regardless of their gender and age. This way, Russian occupants try to press the atmosphere of total fear and forcing the civil population of temporary occupied territory of Ukraine to a collaboration with the Russian occupant administration. In particular, to increase the amount of receiving Russian passports, occupants threaten and blackmail and psychologically impact our civilians. Today, occupants plan to force integrate medical sphere on temporary occupied territories, meaning integrate to Russian standards, and also try to integrate educational processes on temporary occupied territories to Russian standards, and try to do this before 1st of September. But we are aware that the majority of education institutions that are on the temporary occupied territories, they disagree to occupiers' terms and refuse to collaborate with them. Russian occupants try to bring in the employees for the openings that they cannot fill in the educational sphere from Crimea, from so-called Donetsk Republic, and also our temporary occupied territory, and from Russian Federation. Here, what's remarkable that the citizens of Russian Federation, they don't hurry to go work on the temporary occupied territory, so there is a lack of personnel. They don't hurry because they're afraid of shelling. At the same time, we know that some of our citizens, they agreed to collaborate with occupants and agreed to take positions in so-called administration bodies. But occupants, as they fill those positions with Russian Federation citizens, they get rid of the traitors and they just fire those traitors. And that process is going on in Kherson and Melitopol. I want to address the Ukrainians that are right now on temporarily occupied territories, because our goal is to free our occupied territories, all of them. So I address you. We are a member of each village and of each settlement and city, and we're working to free our people and our territories. All of you who has the ability, speak to the people on the occupied Donbass, South and Crimea. Ukrainian defenders will come and free our Ukrainian territories. This week is a year after passing law of national resistance law. Such national resistance is the tool that gave powerful enforcement for armed forces of Ukraine. Since the first days of full-scale invasion, practically efficient There were detachments of territorial defense that were very efficient, with a factor of our victories in Kyiv, Sumy and Kharkiv region, and defense movement that so quote unquote greets occupant on the south and invites every citizen of Ukraine to start defending our country. That's how, in practice, that law works. One day before the invasion, territorial defense amounted over 6,000 of professional military service people and reservists. And since 24th of February, there were long queues to join territorial defense, and now territorial defense is over 100,000 civilians. It's our 100,000 people that join territorial defense and defend our country. To the system of national resistance, it joins defense movement, resistance movement, but the information about resistance movement is not public because resistance movement is the specific to their work. They have to operate in shadows and silence, but there are cases that are public. We can be proud of them, of our resistance movement, and a part of them organized partisan operations on captured territories. Part of them fulfill tasks on the front line and in the rear of the enemy. We know of the incredible story of rescue. We know this the resistance of movement of special operation. They rescued the colleagues. They had to meet and move across the Severskidnetsk, the other group of special operation group that was fulfilling tasks in the rear of the enemy, and to the place of crossing to the controlled territory. There was the Russians were shooting, and under shooting, risking their lives, the fighters of resistance movement, they fulfilled the task with 0 losses. This story became public, and you possibly have heard of it, and maybe sometime it will be the basis of some interesting book or a movie. Now, our traditional information of MOD activity for providing uniform and payments. It's traditional log from 7th to 13th of July to provide detachments of armed forces. Ukraine, the MOD transferred over 30,000 of bulletproof vests, over 16,000 helmets, over 14,000 pairs of footwear, and over 7,000 sets of uniform. In the closest future, according to concluded agreements, we expect to the armed forces to be transferred personal protection equipment of bulletproof vests, over 7,000 and 19,000 of helmets. All that is transferred centralized to via logistics systems of armed forces of Ukraine, and then it's divided by the command of armed forces. Also, we prepare to winter, and we transfer supplies to the warehouses, winter clothes, winter uniform. Those who track our briefings and the dynamics of figures, they can see that this week, next the previous week, we have twice more bulletproof vests, but more uniform. That's related to the counts and how it's reflected in the books, because we reflect only the amounts that are accounted. When the batches are accounted and some of the paperwork is still in progress, we'll officially see them in a day or two. Overall, we contracted a lot more than 1 million of sets of uniform, and we have to see a lot of dynamics of supplies of uniform next week. And I want to mark that MOD analyzes the procedures of certification and account of items that we procure, and our goal is to count practical experience during martial law in order to set necessary requirements to certification of those items. Overall, our priorities are the same. The main task is to provide rhythmical supplies. We keep talking about it, to tackle the needs and receive and to make a resistance stock for armed forces. Yesterday we had stock reserve over 20,000 of bulletproof vests that the command can direct regarding the needs. Next to May or April, you can see the progress, which is evident. Regarding financing, it happens according to plan. Payments are timely, and they are paid in July for June. And we notified previously that MOD financed 100% to military units of salaries. It's called so-called peacetime money, or for the rank also, and for years of service. In the second 10 days, it's additional payments from 30,000 hryvnia to 100,000 hryvnia for participation in combat. We'll see the final results in a week, and in July for June, MOD planned to transfer to the armed forces over 4 billion of hryvnia for salaries, and MOD formed a series of groups of employees that consult military units, because actually there are single cases when due to incorrect, improper paperwork, there could be lags in payments in separate cases, in separate military units. So, and I want to mention that MOD also, for a few months, for several months, we conduct payments to the families of perished soldiers. We will not say any figures, and I want to say that the amount of perished people is the state secret during the martial law. It's has military purpose, and the enemy does not have to know the figures and use them for their capabilities. Therefore, using the opportunity, we address the civilians and civilian initiatives that try to publicly set their figures, thinking that somebody deliberately hides them. It's not so. Don't work for the enemy, and don't disclose those figures until the end of the martial law. In our traditional part, MOD, we have juridical frontline, where we, on a weekly basis, have new and new victories. Those who track our briefings, they remember that last week we notified you that the Odessa court, Ministry of Court, decided to return to administration of MOD land plots in Bohard's district that in due time were illegally seized. We're speaking about court decisions. Today we're talking about that during this week, juridical service of MOD put the efforts to, in fact, return, just in practice, returning those land plots to administration of the MOD. In particular, to implement 4 court decisions of Odessa to the sphere of MOD administration, jointly with the executive service, according to the acts of transfer. We have returned 18 plots of land with a total space of 2.6 thousand hectares, located in Bohard's district of Odessa region, and transferred those lands to the military administration bodies. We're speaking about one of the training grounds. And the MOD keeps the juridical front line and fights with juridical tools with bad suppliers. We have integrity suppliers for foodstuffs, services. We have such suppliers on repairs of military equipment, and juridical service of the MOD. This means to take money from those suppliers, seize money from their suppliers, for improper implementation of contracts. And 11th and 12th of July, Northern Appeals Court passed 2 court decisions for the favor of MOD, and from the business operators they took fines for improper contract fulfillment for to amount 10.2 million hryvnia. Thank you for your kind attention. Hanna Maliar, Deputy MO, Minister of Defense of Ukraine. Thank you for the report. And I would like to give the floor to Oleksii Hromov, Deputy Head of Administration of General Staff of Armed Forces of Ukraine. Mr. Oleksii, I remind you, please tell what the General Staff know about the missile strike on Vinnytsia that happened some hours ago. Yes, today enemy conducted a missile strike on Vinnytsia. Registered stroke of 3 caliber missiles. 2 missiles were downed by our anti-aircraft forces near Rokny settlement. Also in the night at 1 a.m., the enemy struck from MLRS on settlements Bashtanka, Nikolaevska region. They shot 5 rockets that hit civil infrastructure. In the night also, the enemy at 5 a.m. shot from MLRS the settlement Mykolaiv, used 10 reactive rockets of Smerch, also hit civil infrastructure. Overall, since the start of military aggression, the enemy made 630 strikes of missiles Iskander caliber on our territory, on the territory of Ukraine. Regarding total operative situation in the country, main efforts, enemy focuses on combating in the east of our country, in Oleksii, Tomar, and Kyiv directions. The situation did not have sufficient changes over a week. Probable offensive from Belarus and Belarusian invasion into Ukraine is not excluded, but low. But we cannot exclude the special operation forces of Belarus with the same detachments of Russian Federation and private companies, provocations near Homel and Brest regions. We don't include provocations to inspire anti-Ukrainian trends in Belarusian society. In the airspace of southern part of Belarus, until 7th of October of this year, they continued the restriction of flights of all types of civil aircrafts. At the same time, this is not included to the aviation of armed forces and border guard of Belarus. What means that this fact could be an evidence of continuing probable aviation and missile strikes from Belarus territory on Ukraine during the next 3 months. In Chernihiv, Konotop, and Sumy directions, the enemy made aviation strikes near Volodymyrivka, Vovkivka, Maropilda. Conducted mortar artillery fire from MLRS, also at the position of Defense Force of Ukraine. For Thursday to Thursday, and they actively conducted a reconnaissance in Glufar direction of Sumy region. Kharkiv direction, the enemy put main efforts on holding grounds and continue MLRS and rocket strikes at Kharkiv, Rakitny, Oleksii, Solonivka. Conducted aviation strikes on settlements Veliki Saltiv, Prudivka, Moskva, Chepel. In Domenico region, tried the assault, trying to push our troops from the positions and improve their tactical positions. In Slavyansk direction, enemy during the week made aviation strikes at Mazanivka, Mayaki, Bohorodichne, Slavyansk regions, districts, and tried assault in Zumslav direction, trying to capture Krasnopilya, Ivanivka, Dolina, and Mazanivka. In Donetsk operative district, they tried to push our detachments from the positions in Siversky, Bakhmut, and Novdivsk directions. Also, continues fire at our detachments with all the range of weapons. We marked that due to losses, high losses, part of armed forces of the enemy, armed forces of Russian Federation, and detachments of so-called people's militias of DPR on Siversky and Bakhmut direction. They were moved from the front line to renew the compatibility because they suffered severe losses. In Siversky direction, we mark decrease of activity of offensive and assault by the enemy. In Bakhmut direction, the enemy continue assault, trying to capture Spirne, Berestove, Vershina. Try to capture Vuhledarska Heri station, and trying to control the highway Bakhmut-Lysychansk route. Continue rocket aviation strikes at Bakhmut, Konstantinivka, Solidar, Spirne, Chasiv Yar, Drushkovka, Semihirya, Berestove, Vuhledarska Heri station, and other regions. At Tverivska, Kurakhivska, and Zaporizhzhia directions, trying to bind the actions of our armed forces and prevent them from moving to other directions. The enemy continues systematic fire impact. Strikes in Volodymyrka, Pavlovka, Andriivka, Novokhaivka, Kamenka, Maliar. 13th of July made a missile strike at objects of infrastructure of Zaporizhzhia. Kyiv and Mykolaievska direction, there is a decrease of shooting at our armed forces. Probably that's related to destruction of the stocks of ammo of the enemy and expectation of replenishment. Also, we rebuffed the enemy attack. Not a meter of Ukrainian land we have lost over a week, not a meter. But the enemy continuing these missile strikes of our territory. Today, they struck an object of civil structure, and during the week of almost 30% of their strokes were civil, I emphasize civil infrastructure, that is a direct action of Russian military management of genocide of Ukrainian nation. The enemy, by 1.5 times, increased the aviation strike from 70 to 118. Last week, on a daily basis, they made a 7 to 12 of aviation strike, and on 8th and 9th of July, their aviation stroke 50 times. The day before yesterday's 30 times. They hit on Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia and Kharkiv region for the most part. Groups of defense of Ukraine continues defense operation in the operation regions. In Volynsk, Rivnensk, Zhytomyr, Chernihiv, Sumy, and Odessa regions, we conduct the covering of state border and the seashore. We hold and improve the defense lines. In Kharkiv, Lugansk, and Donetsk regions, where there is the most intensive combat, our detachments contain the offensive of the enemy and conduct defensive means. In Zaporizhzhia, Mykolaiv, and Kherson regions, we continue the defensive operation. The situation over a week characterized the counter-battery combat and intelligence, finding the critical objects of the enemy to make strikes on them. To contain the offensive of the enemy and cause maximum losses, we used Maliar and artillery that we received from our partner. We use it for high skill. We are aware of the responsibility for each unit of equipment, of weapons that we have. As the head of the armed forces mentioned, we will not allow every single item of that to happen in the arms of terrorists. Also, on Lores, we use 155 millimeter ammo smart with self-aimed elements that hit almost 30 armed objects of the enemy. Our service people are destroy administration and command and control of the enemy, and break logistic chains of the enemy. Considering the efficiency of our fire strikes, the enemy is forced to change the order of supplies of ammo and fuel. Right now, they consider the opportunity to locate the storages of brigade level on the distance, no closer than 100 kilometers to the contact line, and corpus level storages on the over 150 kilometers from the contact line. Besides, to avoid artillery and rocket strikes from our military, the storages will be located at civil infrastructure, including schools and places for storage, military storages. But with our experience, as you probably saw in the media, the contemporary equipment of type HIMARS allow us to make precision strikes on military, I emphasize military infrastructure of the enemy. You cannot even compare it with the character of actions of the enemy actions that hit civil infrastructure and kills civilian Ukrainians. And really appreciate the help of our kind partners. During our routine activity, General Staff of Armed Forces, one of our functions is operations and high quality training and adding personnel to our detachments. There was a question about females in military and how to say military count. Right now, the practical means of general mobilization that we are conducting, rejecting Russian aggression, they demonstrate that for the military service to armed forces of Ukraine and other military forms, we drafted about 1% of females from total amount of mobilized. Majority or appointed positions of medical personnel, communications, psychology, cooks, administration. So the experience demonstrates that today the state has no necessity to drastically increase the females on the military count. But at the same time, for armed forces, we need specialties and specialists in medicine, radio, communications, and food technologies. Administration of personnel and general staff process some proposals to change to Legal Act in particular on the military that females that have military specialties, they are if they agree to it, they are put on the military account if they agree to it. Also initiated the changes to the order of Ministry of Defense of Ukraine regarding to profile. Also, this order, right, since 1st of October, taken to the military account, to the military register, the females that have those specialties. Considering the big amount of IDPs, in particular of females, they also propose to make changes to this law, number document. So the start of taking females to the military account. They propose to mention that this will start not earlier than a month since the end of the special period in the state. Regarding the further movement of this work, we'll notify you. We continue bringing our victory closer. Thank you. That's pretty information from General Staff of Armed Forces of Ukraine. Oleksii Hromov with us, Deputy Head of the Main Operative Administration of General Staff of Armed Forces. Thank you. And I give the floor to Oleksii Nadtochyi, Head of the Operative Administration of National Guard of Ukraine. Please. Dear all, role and mission of National Guard in rejecting the aggression of Russian Federation for today. Over last week, there was no changes in scope and tasks of personnel National Guard. The parts of National Guard and groups of armed forces of Ukraine participate in defense operation in Zaporizhzhia, Donetsky, Southern Bug regions, and in deterring the offensive of enemy at regions of Kharkiv, Slavyansk, Siversk, in defending cities Kryvyi Rih, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhzhia, where the main efforts are focused on preventing advancement of the enemy in directions of Borislav, Kryvyi Rih, Guleipole, Zaporizhzhia, and holding those land of seashore, guarding and defending the objects of critical infrastructure in the northern western operative zone, together with the border guard of Ukraine and Armed Forces of Ukraine. National Guard covers the state border with Belarus. Also, on top of active combat tasks, the Guard has serviced for security within the country. Continues the stabilization operation and task of territorial defense. At that same time, the main focus is on guarding and securing the important state objects, consulates, state bodies, institutions, and critical infrastructure object. And having counter saboteur reserves. This week, detachments of National Guard were involved jointly with Secret Service and National Police to enter terrorist and counter saboteur actions near military objects, objects of transport infrastructure in Rivne region. Search and rescue for detecting persons that could be accomplices to possible terrorist saboteur groups and act in the interest of the enemy. At the time, we checked 10 settlements and checked about 1,000 persons. 11 persons were detained and moved for deeper checks to Secret Service and police. Also, during the week, to support land operation of our forces, Aviation National Guard for fire strikes at the enemy, conducted 11 helicopter flights, aeromedic evacuation and transport movements, 47 helicopters flight. Detachments of intelligence of National Guard detected 404 targets of the enemy, with civilians posted 124, with the UAVs 280. Thus, with the air intelligence, 3 brigades of operative National Guard, together with 40 separate artillery brigade, conducted very successful actions in Kharkiv regions and destroyed 2 Russian artillery systems of Nona K of 220 caliber, and destroyed the storage of artillery ammo and cargo truck of Russian troops. Diver groups continued demining of Kyiv region, searched 13.5 square kilometers, Dnipro. The National Guard and separately, and with National Police, Armed Forces, and Territorial Defense, 24/7 continue fulfilling tasks on their roadblocks. Currently, National Guard conducts guard on 188 block posts in roadblocks in 16 regions of Ukraine, 35 of them in Kyiv. In the result of a special task to support regime of martial law. Over the week, for criminal and administrative offenses, we detained 1,805 persons. And overall, since the full-scale invasion, we detained over 18,000 persons. For suspect of saboteurs, 369 persons. We seized 118 units of firearms, over 10,000 ammo to it, over 178 cold weapons, 72 grenades, 2 grenade throwers, 10.2 kilos of explosive, 3 anti-tank mines, and artillery ammo. There are examples of successful tasks over the weeks. At a time when aviation strikes of the enemy at positions in Zaporizhzhia region, the National Guard conscript during a week from anti-aircraft stroke at 2 enemy airplanes, Su-25, and overall that person stroke 5 airplanes. And Donetchina, the service purpose destroyed groups of intelligence of the enemy. The enemy used civil vehicles and and made disguise and masking the positions of their positions. But Guardians found those positions and, waiting for a convenient moment, made artillery strikes on those positions and destroyed the enemy and their equipment. At fulfilling task at Svetogorsk in Donetchina region, we received information that in one of the settlements there are 2 females with small children, and one child was in severe status that was under shelling of enemy. But personnel from battalion of battalion of Kolchitsky. They made cover and evacuation of those civilians. With thanks of the actions of our service personnel, the rescued and evacuated those females with children. Also, they evacuated 20 civilians from Bogorodichne, jointly with National Police of Ukraine, Rescue Service, the Guardians planned and organized the evacuation of locals. With small groups, they moved civilians to the safe territory. Each life is important. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you. Such is operative information from the National Guard. Oleksii Nadtochyi with us, Head of Operative Administration of National Guard of Ukraine. Also, we have representative of State Service of Emergency Situations. Please, Viktor Vitovetsky, Director of Department of Organization of Civil Defense of the Rescue Service. Please start with Vinnytsia. What are the consequences of strikes? Dear all, at 2 o'clock, due to missile strikes in the center part of Vinnytsia, we have 20 killed and three of them are children. For medical aid, addressed 90 persons. Out of them, over 50 were hospitalized. Two of them are children, and 34 persons are severely wounded. There is liquidation of the fire on the roof of the officer building, three-story building. The surface is 150 square meters. And cleaning the debris of Yubileni. And the consequence of missile strike damaged over 55 houses of different purpose, and 40 vehicles. From Rescue Service, we have over 160 personnel and over 20 units of equipment, including 9 psychologists and 80 cadets of Vinnytsia Professional College of Rescue Service. Also, their specialized center, fast reactions of Rescue Service, they're delivered there. That's the information related to Vinnytsia. Overall, the detachments of Rescue Service over a day conducted 192 calls on as a response to shelling of occupants, eradicated 17 fires, and provides psychological help over 1,000 people. Since start of full-scale invasion of Russian Federation, we conducted over 43,000 of calls to fires and emergency situations, eradicated over 10,000 fires, saved over 1,500 of civilians, and provided psychological help over 150,000 of people. Regarding demining of free territories, DODs of our service conducted 150 engagements and destroyed over 56 of ammo and search territory of 60 hectares. We destroyed over 160,000 of explosives since start of the full-scale invasion, including 2,000 of aviation bombs. Cleaned the territory over 64,000 hectares. And potentially contaminated by explosives is the territory, was over 220,000 square kilometers. That's over 20 million hectares. Regarding the consequence of shelling Russian Federation of our rescuers detachments, 41 employees of rescuers died, was killed, 134 were wounded, 6 persons are prisoners of war captured. Destroyed over 6 units, 240 buildings were attacked, and 50 of them are completely destroyed. That's operative information from our service. I would like to stop on the issues that is interesting the training for new study years, preparation for the new study year. Upon the order of the Prime Minister of Ukraine, the commission was created by local municipalities and local administrations. Those commissions are comprised by the rescue service for consultancy and methodological aid for cover and for shelter for children in the educational institutions. Right now, the situation is following. For 5th of July information, we have understanding where there will be shelter for 30%, about 30% of children and personnel of educational institutions. The work is ongoing. The time frames. For the start of August, we have to understand the full picture for education institutions. This work is ongoing. Each commission as a representative of the rescue service and the status of those shelters and a possibility to equip them and use them for you is on ongoing control. In parallel, we conduct work on searching the territory and premises of schools, kindergartens, for possible explosives. Special attention is paid to the issue of territories that were freed from the occupants. That is all from me. Thank you, Viktor Vitevetsky, Director of Department of Organization of Means of Civil Defensive Rescue Service. I ask all our speakers to come to the microphones right now. We will speak with the journalist. It will be Q&A. First question, please. Olena Litvinova, Radio Svoboda, Belarusian Service. I have a question to MOD and General Staff. Coming back to the events in Lysychansk, when 4 combatants of Belarusian regiment of Kosciusko-Kalinovsky and 2 became POWs. I would like to define to the Belarusian combatants had official contracts with armed forces of Ukraine, and will they be included to the exchange lists of the 2 citizens of Belarus, the 2 prisoners of war? I'll probably start answering a question. Periodically, they ask us, where's the official status of foreigners that fight for Ukraine, the Ukrainian side? After the 24th of February, after the full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation on our territory, our state called the foreigners to join our fight for peace and democracy in Europe and in the world. On the 1st of March this year, for a time of martial law, according to the order of President of Ukraine, we have visa-free regime for foreigners that wish to join to International Legion of Defense of Ukraine. By the order of President, since 10th of June 2016, was a provision of service for in armed forces for foreigners and persons with no citizenship. It has an order, stipulates the order that are legally in Ukraine, how they serve, according to contract for position of sergeants and grunts. So they come and join the International Legion, the foreigners. Thus, the foreigners that fight for Ukraine have a status of military service people of Ukraine and have the full provision as Ukrainian citizens. The same thing. And the contract, I try to answer your question. Could we delineate those particular, these Belarusian citizens? They did not enter, they were on the territory of Ukraine, because that regiment was created from Belarusians that fled from Belarus from political repressions after the presidential elections. So we have one case when in so-called LDPR they made sentences for death sentences to POWs, foreign POWs that for fighting for Ukraine. How would those two citizens of Belarus, if they have no contracts with the armed forces of Ukraine, how would Ukraine be able to help them or save them from captivity and return them to the territory of Ukraine? Thank you. I'm a service person and representative of our General Staff, but I also serve in the head administration that is directly responsible for combat. Regarding signing and not signing the contract is the head administration of personnel. But I'm convinced that our service personnel that serve in General Staff act according to the legislation. Regarding your question, I will have an opportunity to speak with talk to the personnel, and in the close future I will be able to answer in more detail to your question. We have hundreds of thousands of service personnel. You can send the request with the regarding the last names, and we'll provide you the answer. What is their status? We just don't have the information about each particular person from hundreds of thousands. But really related to exchange of POWs. Right now, it's the authority of head administration of intelligence. You can make requests about the status of a certain person. And for numerous times, we made it public with all the media, in particular on Marathon, TV Marathon, in our internet resources, the contacts, where and how you can find out of people who either are missing, or if you know they're captured, you know you can find out their status. Many times we was the hotline of the commissioner of missing persons that is functioning in Ukraine. There is also a joint center of search and freeing the captured. It's under Secret Service of Ukraine, and also a hotline of National Information Bureau. 1648 is short number. I can say now, and all those contacts you're free to use, and you can find out with all those contacts or the status of persons that you're interested in. I have a question from colleagues from Ukraine Forum. Today in the public, there's information about that to Belarus there's transport air carriers on 22 Ante for delivering heavy armaments, equipments, and military, and for paratrooping the paratroops and paratroopers. What do you know about the amount of Russian troopers in Belarus? Or don't you see the striking groups of the enemy there? Who can come with that? We keep a close eye, and our intelligence keep a close eye on the movements of the enemy on temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine and also in territory of the Republic of Belarus. Movements of airplanes from Belarus and from Russian Federation is no secret for us. It's not a single case that you're saying. Yes, on a daily basis they fly. Yes, there are flights. Yes, the airplane can make drop paratroopers. Also, there are other airplanes that can fulfill those tasks. Yeah, they're there. Creating the strike groups on territory of Belarus, we do not observe. But, as we have mentioned, I mentioned in my speech, we provide that they could make some provocations. And I will ask you once again, what is the prognosis on the offensive in Slavyansk, Kramatorsk? What are the prognosis on offensive there? Prognosis. Predictions. Do you have any predictions? Yes, naturally there are predictions. We are aware that the enemy will continue try attempts. They don't want just to hold the position. They will attempt to capture fully Donetsk region. Firstly, to grab full Lugansk region, and then to develop offensive in Donetsk region. We have several variants how the situation will evolve, how the enemy will act, and we'll track according to the characters of their regrouping from one direction to the other direction. Firstly, from their combat detachments, paratroopers, movement of tank detachments. We'll look where they will try to create strike groups. We track that, and we planned means to react to that. We don't exclude that there will be offensive. We don't exclude that option, of course, and we're prepared. What can you say, if you can share something about how we prepare to freeing the South? Freeing the South. Preparation is active not only for freeing the South, but for freeing the whole territory of our country. We're actively, I want to emphasize actively, using the armaments that are kindly provided by our partners. Daily basis, we decrease the offensive potential of the enemy. Firstly, we want to stabilize the situation. That's step one. Parity in our means of fire strikes. We decrease the potential of the enemy. We destroy their logistic chains, their ammo we destroy. The enemy understands that. They try to be smartest, but as armed forces are open to the community, that also the enemy storages of ammo are open to HIMARS, and we will destroy those storage. And we will do that on a daily, nightly basis. Well, thank you for the great news that lately happened on a daily basis in big amounts. Thank you. Naturally, we'd be very happy if we had a range of armaments that allows us the opportunity to strike in more depth in enemy. But we have what we have, and it has a powerful impact on the enemy. And Hanna, today you were called about negotiation with Czech Republic and Poland that they provide next batch of armaments. But can you share anything else about other countries? What's planned? Heavy armaments and anti-missile defense. So we have ongoing negotiations, and you see in the news the intensity of aid does not drop, and what we're saying is happens rhythmically and in a due order, where we can publicly open it. We do this, agreeing with our partners, of course, aligning with the partners, of course, because some of the partners do this, they wish to do it publicly. Some of the partners want to help Ukraine very cautiously and unpublicly. But we have to be aware that any detailed information about military aid will be used by the enemy to adjust their capabilities to our capabilities. So more than we publicly disclose, we won't. But I think we all noticed in media this wave of so-called reports about HIMARS. You saw the reports of Krabs, also what we can share. We can say that Western aid fulfills their tasks on the front line. It is so, but regard anti-missile, because there are strikes in Vinnytsia and what happens, or that we lack contemporary complexes, anti-missile, that we keep negotiations, but you're not ready to disclose something, what could happen in the close future. Like in principle, would in principle change the situation. Since 24th of February, we keep the order of informing upon the fact of agreements, not during the negotiations, but after there is a fact of agreement. Thank you. The deblocking of Black Sea and Dunai throat, how they impacted the transporting of grain and other cargoes. Who could share the information? From a military standpoint, armed forces continue fulfilling tasks aimed at improving the situation in the country, in the world. Thus, currently, there's consultancies and all the practical means regarding providing opportunity for navigation in Dunai River, regarding overall situation on the coast, on the shore, and equatorium of Black Sea. I want to say that our enemy, I don't know how to say the simple words, they continue attempts to try to control our territory, to make maximum damage and strikes. At 2 o'clock I was going to the briefing, and I was got information that today the enemy made aviation stroke on the Zmini, but they missed. Yes, but yeah, let them strike. Let them strike the Zmini. They're fighting what? We're fighting sea waves. They're fighting rocks. They just striking on the remnants of their military equipment. We control the territory of Zmini Island, and we will control the whole equatorium of the Black Sea in the future. They fight the remnants of their equipment and their remnants of their success. The situation in Black Sea will change. It will be a symbol for Ukraine that the world understands. We'll also see that the ships started going and the grain starts moving, and that's the result of your colossal military work. Thank you all. Thank the speakers who were with us today. Hanna Maliar, Deputy Minister of Defense. Oleksii Hromov, Deputy Head of Administration of General Staff of Armed Forces of Ukraine. Oleksii Nadtochyi, Head of Operative Administration of National Guard of Ukraine. And Viktor Vitevetsky, Director of Department of Organization of Means of Civil Defense of Rescue Service. Thank you all. This Minister Central Ukraine, confirm. I'm Vadik Krasnoki. Next briefing will be at 4 o'clock. I'll speak about it. We expect Alexander Tkachenko, Minister of Culture and Informational Policy of Ukraine, and also many guests with him to speak about international aid in sphere of containing the cultural heritage of Korean heritage, reacting to emergency situation, providing first aid, documenting damages of culture, heritage,